For nearly 2 millennia, the Colosseum has stood at the heart of Rome, first as the grand arena of a mighty empire, and later as an enduring symbol of Italy's heritage. Once, its arches framed scenes of roaring crowds and deadly gladiatorial combat. Today, they overlook throngs of tourists and solemn ceremonies. The story of this monument spans 2,000 years of history, from its inception as a tool of political power to its survival through neglect, reuse, and restoration. In this journey, we will explore the Colosseum's uses and transformations through each era: ancient glory, medieval repurposing, Renaissance rediscovery, and modern conservation, revealing how the amphitheater evolved from a stage of spectacle to a global icon of culture. The Colosseum story begins in the aftermath of tragedy and tyranny. In 64 AD, a great fire had ravaged Rome, and the infamous Emperor Nero seized vast swaths of the burnt city for his own palace, the Domus Aurea, Golden House, complete with an artificial lake and gardens. After Nero's fall, the new Emperor Vespasian of the Flavian dynasty sought to erase this excess. Around 70 AD, he proposed and began building a massive public amphitheater on the site of Nero's drained lake, symbolically returning the land to the Roman people. This ambitious project, originally called the Amphitheatrum Flavian Amphitheater, was funded in part by spoils from the recent war in Judea, treasure and slaves brought from the sack of Jerusalem's temple. Indeed, ancient sources suggest that thousands of Jewish prisoners of war were forced to labor on the construction alongside Roman workers and engineers. From the start, the Colosseum was envisioned as Rome's greatest arena. Vespasian chose a location in the city's core, adjacent to the Forum and not far from the Circus Maximus, ensuring easy access and maximum visibility. Using advanced engineering, the Romans erected an elliptical stadium 189 meters long and 156 meters wide, with a towering four-tier facade of arches and columns. The design could hold an estimated 50,000 to 80,000 spectators, arranged by social rank from senators to common citizens. In an era long before modern machinery, Roman builders achieved this feat in barely a decade, thanks to innovations like strong concrete made with volcanic sand and an ingenious web of arches and vaults to support the immense structure. By 80 AD, the Colosseum was completed and ready to host its inaugural games under Vespasian's son, Emperor Titus, a grand opening spectacle. In 80 AD, Romans from all walks of life flooded into the brand new amphitheater for an opening festival that reportedly lasted 100 days. Emperor Titus spared no expense in making the debut games unforgettable, an emphatic display of the empire's wealth, power, and generosity to the people. According to historical accounts, the inaugural festivities included a staggering variety of spectacles. Gladiatorial combats, ranked fighters clashed in mortal duels, showcasing bravery and battle skill. Animal hunts, venations, exotic beasts from across the empire, lions, elephants, bears, and more, were pitted against hunters in a demonstration of Rome's dominion over nature. Naumachii, mock naval battles. In an engineering marvel, the arena floor was flooded with water to reenact famous sea battles on scaled-down ships. Public executions, condemned criminals and prisoners of war met gruesome ends for the crowd's morbid entertainment, often staged as recreations of mythic tales or military victories. Athletic and military displays, trained athletes engaged in wrestling, racing, and javelin throws, and Roman legionaries put on martial demonstrations to honor the gods and the state. Ancient writers record these opening games as almost superhuman in scale. One report by Suetonius claims that over 5,000 wild animals were slaughtered in the arena during those first months. The sheer extravagance, battles on land and sea, blood sport, and pageantry established the Colosseum as more than just an entertainment venue. It was a monument to Roman civilization and imperial might, a place where the entire known world seemed to perform for Rome's delight. Little wonder that the amphitheater soon acquired a colloquial nickname, the Colosseum, likely inspired by a colossal 35-meter statue of Nero, the Colossus, that stood nearby in Nero's Park. Though the statue is long gone, its name lives on in the global lexicon as synonymous with this great arena. The Golden Age of Spectacles, 80 to 250 AD. For the next 2 centuries, the Colosseum thrived as the beating heart of Roman public life. Emperors from the Flavian dynasty onward recognized that grand spectacles in the arena were a powerful tool to win public favor and display Rome's dominance. Admission to events was typically free for Roman citizens, subsidized by the state or the emperor's purse, as part of the policy of panem et circenses, bread and circuses, to keep the populace fed and entertained. Over time, the shows grew ever more elaborate and creative, each ruler seeking to outshine his predecessors. Emperor Domitian, Titus's brother, reigned 81 to 96 AD, made significant additions that elevated the arena's capabilities. He constructed the extensive hypogeum, a two-level underground complex of tunnels, cages, and mechanical elevators beneath the wooden arena floor. This hidden world allowed for astonishing special effects. Gladiators and wild animals could appear seemingly by magic, rising on elevators through trapdoors in the floor. Domitian's engineers built 80 vertical lifts operated by teams of slaves, plus pulleys and ramps, enabling stage sets to be changed and beasts released in seconds. He also completed adjacent training schools for gladiators like the Ludus Magnus and refined the Colosseum's facilities to improve spectator comfort. With these enhancements, from an expandable underground menagerie to awnings, the velarium, rigged by sailors to shade the crowd, the Colosseum became the world's most sophisticated entertainment complex of its time. Spectacles in the arena reached their zenith under emperors like Trajan in the 2nd century. After Trajan's conquest of Dacia, he celebrated by holding an unprecedented series of games in 107 AD. According to ancient chroniclers, 11,000 animals were killed and 10,000 gladiators fought over a marathon 123 days of festivities, a record of extravagance that boggles the mind. Such events required enormous logistical coordination. Exotic animals imported from every corner of the empire, from African lions to Asian tigers, hundreds of gladiators trained, armed, and armored, elaborate set pieces and costumes, and the provisioning of tens of thousands of spectators each day. The Colosseum spectacles thus drove a miniature economy of their own, employing animal traders, gladiator trainers and doctors, set designers, vendors of food and souvenirs, and more. Hosting games was costly, but it was an investment in prestige and public goodwill for the sponsors, usually the emperor or wealthy aristocrats competing for popularity. Beyond sheer entertainment, the Colosseum served important social and political functions in Roman society. It was a stage where power was performed. Emperors would attend in person, seated in the imperial box to be seen by the masses as benevolent providers of spectacle. In the arena, military victories were reenacted or celebrated with parades of spoils, reinforcing the glory of Roman arms. Public executions of criminals or traitors sent a strong message of imperial justice and deterrence. The very order of seating in the amphitheater mirrored the Roman social hierarchy, from the emperor and senators at the front, through noble families, soldiers, foreign dignitaries, down to plebeians and even women and slaves in the upper nosebleeds. Gathering all classes under one roof for a shared experience helped forge a sense of communal identity as Romans, while also reminding everyone of their place in the social order. In short, the Colosseum in its prime was political theater on the grandest scale, where the emperor could bolster his legitimacy amid cheers, and the populace could indulge in collective pride and escapism. Challenges in the last games, 250 to 523 AD. By the mid-3rd century, the uninterrupted golden age of Colosseum spectacles began to wane. The Roman Empire was entering a time of crisis. Political instability, economic strain, and shifting cultural values, all of which left their mark on the great arena. Emperors still sponsored games, but fewer and less lavishly. The once constant schedule of blood sport faced headwinds on multiple fronts. One major factor was the financial cost. During the crisis of the 3rd century, around 235 to 284 AD, the empire was racked by civil wars, invasions, and economic depression. With state coffers drained by military spending and inflation rampant, funding massive games became increasingly hard to justify. Lavish spectacles that once glorified the emperor now seemed an extravagance, as resources had to be diverted to frontier defense and shoring up a faltering economy. Emperors facing these pressures scaled back on the most expensive entertainments. Exotic animals grew scarcer in the arena due to disrupted trade and high costs, and the frequency of gladiator combats dwindled as the specialized schools suffered funding cuts. The Grand Arena, which once hosted battles celebrating conquest, was itself a casualty of the empire's diminished fortunes. Meanwhile, a profound cultural shift was underway. The rise of Christianity in the 4th century brought new moral perspectives that clashed with the ethos of the gladiatorial games. After Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity in 313 AD, Christian writers and leaders grew increasingly vocal in condemning the brutality of the arena. The shedding of human blood for sport, they argued, was incompatible with Christian values of the sanctity of life and mercy. The fact that early Christians had been persecuted, and according to later tradition, martyred, in Roman arenas gave the Colosseum a darker resonance for the growing Christian population. As Christianity became the empire's dominant faith, pressure mounted to phase out gladiatorial combat. Even Constantine, though he did not ban the games outright, imposed regulations, limiting gladiator schools and promoting tamer alternatives like theatrical shows and chariot races. Subsequent Christian emperors became increasingly uneasy about sponsoring the old bloody spectacles, especially as bishops and congregations denounced them. Nature, too, played a role in the Colosseum's decline. During the 4th and 5th centuries, a series of natural disasters struck Rome and damaged the amphitheater, hastening its deterioration. In 217 AD, lightning sparked a fire that severely burned the Colosseum's upper wooden levels, temporarily closing it until repairs in the 240s. Later, major earthquakes rocked the region, one in 442 AD and another in 508 AD, causing chunks of the structure to collapse and opening cracks in its walls. Flooding from the nearby Tiber River periodically swamped the lower passages as well. With the imperial government struggling, funds for repairs were scarce. After each calamity, the Colosseum was patched up as needed, but never fully restored to its original glory. Over time, unrepaired damage left sections of the amphitheater unstable or unusable for large events. All these factors culminated in the end of the gladiatorial games in the early 5th century. The last known gladiator fights in the Colosseum took place perhaps around 404 AD, if one famous account is to be believed. The story goes that during a gladiator bout that year, a Christian monk named Telemachus leapt into the arena, trying to stop the violence. The enraged crowd stoned him to death on the spot, but when Emperor Honorius heard of the incident, he was so horrified that he banned gladiator games thereafter. Whether this tale is apocryphal or not, it aligns with the timeline by 404. Gladiatorial combat was indeed outlawed in the Western Empire under Honorius's reign. Roman society had turned a corner. Executions and animal hunts, venations, continued a bit longer. The last recorded animal fights in the Colosseum occurred in 523 AD during the Gothic kingdom of Theodoric. But after the early 6th century, no more screams of warriors or beasts echoed in the arena. See ya. Great stone ellipse that had once been filled with the din of battle fell silent. Abandonment and adaptation, 500 to 1000 AD. With the end of the games, the Colosseum entered a new chapter as a hulking relic of a lost era. The Western Roman Empire itself fell in 476 AD, and Rome's population and power dwindled in the centuries that followed. Without imperial patronage, the Colosseum, like many grand structures of antiquity, faced neglect and disuse. The ingeniously designed mechanisms that once wowed audiences were left to rust and rot. The wooden arena floor and its trapdoors disintegrated, the underground machinery seized up, and the massive awning, velarium, never unfurled again. Weeds and wild grasses took root in cracks, and rubble from earthquakes and time gradually filled the lower corridors. By the early Middle Ages, the once mighty amphitheater was a partially ruined skeleton, yet it was far from abandoned by humans altogether. Medieval Romans found practical new uses for the Colosseum, adapting the structure to fit their much-changed world. The enormous building provided ample sheltered space and a ready supply of materials, which a smaller resource-strapped city could hardly ignore. By around the 6th to 8th centuries, evidence suggests that the arena had effectively become a small village within the city. Homes were built into the arcades and passageways, simple dwellings tucked under the remaining vaults. Workshops and shops operated in the Colosseum's arches, as artisans and traders took advantage of its central location and sturdy walls. The broad open arena, once the scene of combat, might now serve as a corral for livestock or a communal dump for refuse. In some sections, soil accumulated enough that small gardens or plots for farming sprang up, feeding those who lived in the shade of the ancient stands. In essence, everyday life in early medieval Rome repurposed the Colosseum as a domestic and commercial hub, its grandstands sheltering families and its corridors echoing with the sounds of hammers and livestock instead of gladiators' swords. The church also left its mark on the Colosseum during this period. As Christianity reframed Rome's identity, the amphitheater, a former stage of pagan spectacles and persecutions, was reinterpreted and even sanctified. At least one small church or chapel was established within the Colosseum structure by the 6th or 7th century. A chapel known later as Santa Maria della Pietà was created in one of the vaulted bays, the 24th arcade of the amphitheater. According to later records, this may have been in memory of the souls who died in the arena, including alleged Christian martyrs. The presence of the chapel meant the Colosseum was never entirely secular or forgotten. It remained a place of worship and was tended by clergy or hermits through the Middle Ages. By the 12th century, it was referred to as San Salvatore in Rota Colisei and was cared for by a confraternity. Along with the chapel, the arena floor itself became a cemetery for a time, a consecrated ground where the departed could be laid to rest among the ruins. In the medieval Christian imagination, the Colosseum's dilapidation was seen as a moral lesson. The grand amphitheater had been struck down by God's will for its bloody past, now serving as a shrine where the faithful might honor martyrs and contemplate the fall of worldly glory. Throughout these centuries, the Colosseum's materials also offered a valuable resource. Even as some people lived and prayed inside the structure, others were busy taking it apart. Metal was especially prized. The iron clamps that once held the massive stones together were pried out and melted down, leaving pockmarks that are still visible on the walls today. This kind of sanctioned scavenging or spolia was common. A vast abandoned structure like the Colosseum was seen as a convenient quarry for anyone building in Rome. Yet, despite the pillaging and the plant overgrowth, the Colosseum still stood largely intact in form through the first millennium. An 8th century monk, the Venerable Bede, famously wrote of it, "Rome will exist as long as the Colosseum does. When the Colosseum falls, Rome will fall. When Rome falls, the world." Such words indicate that even in ruin, the Colosseum loomed large in the imagination, a weathered giant whose endurance was tied to that of the eternal city itself.